My topic is about the persecution of the Rohingya. My Anne Frank quote is, quote, "These wretched people are sent to filthy slaughterhouses like a herd of sick, neglected cattle." This is a very powerful quote that shows just how sick and atrocious the Holocaust was and how badly the Jews were treated. Introduction. Anne Frank wrote the world-famous Holocaust book, Anne Frank, The Diary of a Young Girl. The Holocaust was a terrible time. The Jews were hunted and sent to camps to be killed. Hitler was a great influencer and public speaker and was able to create the illusion that Jews were criminals. The Holocaust killed Jews by the millions, and Anne Frank's book not only represents the optimism she had during the terrible atrocities of the Holocaust, but can also help people realize similar things that might happen today. That's why my topic about the Rohingya, a Muslim-derived group that live in Myanmar, connects to Anne Frank. Anne Frank, a young girl who was murdered in World War II, is also the author of the world-famous Holocaust book, Anne Frank, The Diary of a Young Girl. It represents the optimism she had during the Holocaust, and her book can also help us understand the Rohingya in Myanmar and other genocides that may happen today. And a genocide is the deliberate killing of a large group of people, especially those of a particular nation or ethnic group. The word genocide was actually created after the Holocaust and was thought of as a crime after what Hitler did to the Jews in World War II. Who are the Rohingya? Myanmar, also known as Burma, is a country in Asia, to the east of Bangladesh and to the northwest of Thailand. The Rohingya are a Muslim-derived group that live in the southwest part of Myanmar, and they are the world's most persecuted group of people, and no one knows what's happening to them. I asked my LA class who knew anything about Myanmar or of the people in it, and only one person raised their hand. In this educated area, with access to all news shows, radios, TVs, phones, and laptops, everything, and so few people know about it. And now to tell you more about who they are and what's happening to them. The Rohingya are descendants of Muslims that ended up in Myanmar. There are 1.1 million Rohingyas living in Myanmar right now. The disagreement between Burma and the Rohingya lay in their roots in religion. Myanmar is a Buddhist country, and the Rohingyas are Muslims. They've had a shaky connection for a long time, but it finally has ruptured. But what does persecution really mean, and what's being done to them? The Rohingya are being persecuted by the army and government of Myanmar and have suffered systematic discrimination by the government and the people. It has been proved okay to sexually harass and abuse the Rohingya, and they have recurring instances of when their villages are being burnt down, they're being forced to flee, and sometimes they even get killed. This is a picture that is believed to show Rohingyas fleeing from their burning villages. This is a video about what's happening to them.
We're in one of the Rohingya refugee camps on the border between Bangladesh and Burma. We have been investigating the particularly brutal massacre in the village of Tulartoli. We're literally talking about several hundreds of men, women, and children who were killed. It's not just the sheer number of people who were killed there, but the brutality that really sets this massacre apart.
The leadership of Myanmar, Aung San Suu Kyi. Who is she, and what is she doing to stop the situation? Suu Kyi was elected leader/president of Myanmar in 2015, but until a few months ago, she hasn't spoken or done anything to stop the horrible persecution. Suu Kyi is a Nobel Peace Prize winner, and the people of Myanmar had high hopes for her to stop the ongoing persecution. She was their peace symbol, and was in house arrest for 20 years. The whole world was fighting for her to be released, and to become the leader of Myanmar. She was fighting for it. Before she was elected, she was speaking out. And while in house arrest, she won multiple peace awards. Yet she's let people down. She hasn't done anything to stop the problem. Even though Suu Kyi is leader of Myanmar, the junta, or military forces, or a political group that rule a country after taking over by force, they are actually in control. They are ruthless and don't like the Rohingya. The generals are ordering the burning of villages and allowing their soldiers to do whatever they like to the Rohingyas. Suu Kyi spoke at a Nobel Peace Prize conference, and she created more harm than good. After her speech, there was an outcry in Myanmar. Around 400,000 Rohingyas were displaced and 200 were killed. An article on the BBC was discussing whether or not Aung San Suu Kyi could be accused of genocide. The army has been doing terrible things, and she hasn't publicly shamed the wrongdoing of the army, as people were hoping and expecting. The army has been brutally attacking, raping, and burning the villages of the Rohingya, and she hasn't said anything. Has anything changed since Suu Kyi was elected? Approximately 43,000 Rohingyas have been killed in Myanmar. They have strict restrictions on their lives that create a difficult world to live in. They have no right to education and have no freedom to leave or move within the country. They don't have an easy access to medical care and are discriminated against. Suu Kyi has tried to help but failed, and the army are still burning villages and forcing the Rohingyas to flee Myanmar. Conclusion. There is a literary value to learning more about the Rohingyas because it can help you understand the situation that Anne Frank was in when she wrote her book, Anne Frank, The Diary of a Young Girl. It's a book about the optimism of a young girl through the terrible atrocities of the Holocaust, and by learning more about the book and the circumstances on what it was written about, it's possible to use it as an outlook on things happening now. Using my learning about the Rohingyas in Myanmar, I have been able to understand more fully what was happening in the rest of the world when Anne Frank was in hiding. We as people need to understand just how bad the situation was for Anne Frank and use that as an outlook on things happening now. Even though most of the population in developed countries have read the Anne Frank diary, something like it's still happening today. Why is it necessary for someone like Miss Christopher to keep teaching this book to us? Isn't it supposed to help us stop more genocides? The only reason to study the past is to be cautioned about similar things happening in the future. Questions? Emma?
How recent is the information you used in your presentation?
Well, it's gotten quite a bit better, but in all these articles that I read, they all happened late 2017, early 2018. Alvaro?
Why was Suu Kyi under house arrest?
Because she was in the Congress, and then she was people were wanting for her to be leader, but the junta didn't want that, so they placed her on house arrest, and that's why the whole world was fighting for her, because they thought it was unfair.
Well, thank you very much.